What's going on, guys? My name is Lieben, and today I'm going to be replacing some good old-fashioned wheel bearings on my 350Z. I went ahead and replaced the brake rotors and pads a couple weeks ago because I was trying to find and kind of eliminate a wheel noise that I've been hearing. I thought it was that the brakes, the brake rotor was warped, and I thought by replacing them and replacing the brake pads that would get rid of the noise. But I still keep on hearing a whooshing sound basically when I'm coasting, not when I'm pressing on the brake or when I'm stepping on the car. Well, when I'm stepping on the car I really can't hear anything because of the exhaust that I have, but when I let go of the gas pedal and the car just goes on its own, there's like a whoo, whoo, whoo kind of noise. That's the best I can describe it. The only other thing I can think of is it being the wheel hub and bearing assembly, so that is what I'm gonna go ahead and replace. I hear it mainly on this side, which is the passenger side, but what I'm gonna go ahead and do right now is replace the passenger side one first. I bought both of them. If that eliminates it, I'm not quite sure if I want to go ahead and replace the driver's side. I might go ahead and do it, or I might just leave an extra one in case my Bluesy, which I drive a lot, it's my daily driver. If that one ever goes bad, I have an extra one. I'm not quite sure yet what I'll go ahead and do, but for right now, just go ahead and take off the brake caliper so I can go ahead and slide off the brake rotor, and then so I can go ahead and actually get to the wheel hub and bearing assembly. So to take off the caliper, it's actually pretty easy. There is just two bolts. There's this one up here, and then there's that one right there. So you just go ahead and take those two bolts off, and then the whole caliper comes off. Alright, and now that I've taken off the bolts holding onto the caliper, I have a bucket right here. I'm going to go ahead and take off the caliper and put it on top of the bucket so I can go ahead and remove the disc rotor. And here you can see the wheel hub assembly with the bearing. It does look pretty rusted. I wouldn't be surprised if they are bad. The first time that I checked it, what I was confused with is that when I turn it, it doesn't really do any noise at all. Which in my head, I would think that if the wheel bearings were going bad, that you'd hear some sort of like metal on metal contact or screeching, but they sound pretty quiet. But like I said, I went ahead and replaced the other two things that I thought it could be. So this is why I'm replacing this as well, because I haven't seen the tire scrape on anything. There aren't any marks that it may be rubbing on anything. Alright, and now the only thing holding on the wheel hub and bearing assembly onto the car are these four bolts. So you have those two up there, and then these two down here. From what I hear, that one is the most difficult to take off because it has this arm, lower control arm, or both of these arms right here, kind of reduce the space right here, making it more difficult to take off. But I'll go ahead and see how I manage to take all of these off. So I've gone ahead and decided to tackle on the hardest bolt first, and what I went ahead and did is grabbed a long 17mm bolt. These are all 17mm, and I went ahead and turned the steering wheel to the right so that it would give me more space and actually fit the socket onto here. I would be able to turn it, except I went ahead and parked the car really close to the wall of the garage on the driver's side, which is why now it's kind of bumping on some stuff that we have there, and I can't turn it anymore. But there seems to be enough room here for me to go ahead and put the socket and untie it. I just have to be really careful not to strip it. Alright guys, and here we have that difficult bolt. If you guys can see right here, because I had it cricket, it did kind of start to strip a little bit. It's still in pretty good conditions. I mean, that side's kind of bad, but the reason being that it kind of stripped here on the head was because I wasn't able to fully put the 17mm on there. It was kind of crooked and it would slip off. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is when I put it back in, I'll go ahead and put one of the other ones that are easier to take off. So then that has a good head when I go ahead and put it back on. And now I'll go ahead and continue on to all of the other ones that are a lot easier. Okay, and now that all the 4 bolts are off, I will go ahead and see how to take off the wheel hub. I've seen some videos of some people have like a really hard time because the hub is seized onto the wheel knuckle. Something tells me that the previous owner, if they changed the wheel hub, they might have had that issue. I don't know if they were tapping on it right here and they cracked the shield right here. I'm pretty sure this doesn't come off, it stays on there. It seems to have been cracked. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can pull the wheel hub from the outside or see if I can give it some taps from there. First I'll see if it just pops right out. I've seen some people have luck, it just comes off with them wiggling with their hands. But if not, I'll see if I can put like maybe like a flathead or something to go ahead and help it kind of wiggle out. Alright, and I can already see that this thing is pretty stuck on here. So I'll go ahead and spray it with some penetrating oil and then go ahead and give it some taps with a mallet or a hammer to see if it pops out. Okay, so I went ahead and just caked it with some penetrating oil, and I'll go ahead and tap it here. Hopefully with some of the vibration, more oil goes in and eventually it pops out. And of course it's just my luck that this thing is really stuck on here. I've given it pretty good hits and it still doesn't want to come out. So I'll go ahead and continue trying to tap on it, and I will be back when it starts to come loose or I'm able to take it off. So now after a couple more taps, you can see that it is actually starting to separate from the knuckle. I was scared because at first right here you can see it seems to be that it was separating, the actual wheel hub was separating from the bearing, because this back here I believe is the bearing and this is just the hub. I was worried that the hub was separating from the bearings because that would have made it a lot harder. I wouldn't have anything really to hit to go ahead and pull it out. But now that I've gone ahead and tapped it some more, I kind of took a risk on there. I see that now it's starting to pull on or separate from there. Now I can use some sort of flathead to go ahead and put in there and pry it off more if tapping on it doesn't work anymore. And here we finally have the wheel hub and bearing assembly. When I was tapping on it, I managed to kind of nick the mud guard for the brake rotors, and you can see right here it's a bit bent. I'll just go ahead and tap that back and it will be straight again, so that's not really any big of a problem. And just like that, it is back to normal, so that wasn't hard. And here we can see the other dust shield for the bearing, I believe, that was actually cracked here a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep that one. Hopefully that wasn't the reason why the bearings, if they did fail, hopefully that wasn't the reason why. Alright, so I've gone ahead and inspected both of the wheel bearings, the old one and the new one. Now, I don't know if this is a sign of a bad bearing or not, but I went ahead and moved it, and I can almost hear the same noise I was hearing when I was driving it. Obviously a lot quieter, but I can almost hear that whooshing sound. And this one also does feel a lot more looser, like I can spin it more freely than this one. I don't know if those are signs of bad bearings, but this does seem a lot more promising, more leaning towards it was the bearings that are bad. But hopefully you guys can go ahead and hear the noise that I'm talking about when I spin this one here right now. So you do hear what seems to be some like metal on metal contact. It doesn't sound that bad, but you can hear a little bit, and you can see how easy I can go ahead and turn this one too. Now if I bring this new one over here and try to not make any noise, we'll see that this one really doesn't make any noise. And I also have to use a lot more force to go ahead and turn the bearing from the wheel hub. But yeah, hopefully you heard that one doesn't really make any noise. What was actually making noise was that I was moving the studs here from the cardboard where I have it on. That was making the noise. But yeah, now I'll go ahead and just install the new one. Okay, and now that I've gone ahead and cleaned some of the like dust and debris that I had, I went ahead and just used a wire brush and went ahead and just cleaned the edges right here where the wheel bearing goes seated, and also in the inside right here it was kind of covered in some, like, I guess probably like dust from the road and all that. Now I can go ahead and put the dust shield back on and then put the wheel bearing. And because this is a new wheel hub assembly and bearing, I don't want to go ahead and just hit it right here with a hammer or a steel mallet. So I went ahead and grabbed this rubber one. I'll see if I can tap it right here in between so it can go ahead and start being seated into position. Okay, and then the bearing is now officially on. What I went ahead and did is I went ahead and continued giving it some taps with a mallet, and then I started threading in the bolts. I did that because I wanted to make sure that it was aligned, that the holes on the wheel bearing were aligned with the hole on the knuckle. And also because if I was able to thread them in, I could also use the bolt to go ahead and push it back into place. So here you can see one of the bolts, and down there you could see the other one. So I went ahead and started tying them down, and that is how I was able to get the bearing to start sitting flush with the wheel knuckle right here. But I didn't go ahead and tie them all because I still wanted there to be some flexibility in case the bearing was going in crooked. But now that all four of them have gone all the way in pretty smoothly, I can now go ahead and tie in all four bolts. This right here is the bolt that kind of fits crooked when I put the socket in, which is why I went ahead and gave it some tap just to make sure it's as secure as it can be onto that bolt. And just like that, it is tightened. Now the other three bolts are pretty easy to tighten. Okay, and now that all four bolts are tightened, I can go ahead and straighten out the tires so I can put the brake disc back on. I went ahead and cleaned some of the excess grease. I believe that wasn't grease for the wheel bearing, but it was for like packaging, so it wouldn't get rusted when it was being shipped. I didn't want the grease that was on here making contact with the disc, with the brake disc, which was why I cleaned it. But now that it's clean, I can go ahead and put the disc back on. And now that the disc is back on, I can go ahead and put the caliper. I now have put on the calipers and went ahead and tightened both of the bolts that hold it on to the knuckle and the rest of the car. I'll go ahead and now put on the wheel, and I'll go ahead and take the car out, take it for a drive, and hopefully this is the last we hear of that noise. If it's not this, and honestly I do not know what else to look for other than replacing the other wheel bearing on the front side, because the noise, I am hearing it in the front side. I don't believe it's the back tires, but I mean, who knows, I could be hearing it on the wrong side too, but we'll go ahead and find out here shortly. Alright, so I went ahead and actually took the car out. I was gonna go ahead and take it for a test drive, but just as I was taking it out, I immediately started hearing the noise. So what I did was I just turned the car around, put it on this side, so now I would have some space to go ahead and install the other wheel hub and bearing assembly. So I actually already have it installed on here. I went ahead and basically did all the same steps on the other side on this side. You can see right here is the new wheel hub and bearing assembly. And I also went ahead and noticed as I was taking off the tire, it actually looked a bit funny. And if you guys can see right here, you guys can see where the threads on the tires is actually making contact on the ground, and where it's not. And I honestly started thinking to myself, I've checked these tires before and I cannot believe that I hadn't seen this before. But if I go ahead and put the camera on like this, you can kind of almost tell, or I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but here in person you can actually tell that this tire is not even. You can see some of the threads right there are a lot higher, like that one is higher, then that one goes lower, and basically like that, it keeps on skipping. And if you actually see the threads, you can see that that one, it's almost like you can't even see it, and then that one you can see it, but it's kind of ripping apart. Then it kind of goes like two, where the depth of the thread is really deep, then you can barely see it, and then it goes back. So now that I've seen this, I'm pretty confident now that these tires are actually junk, and I actually need to go and have them be replaced. So a couple months ago, I actually replaced the tires on the passenger side, and the reason because of that was when I took it off, I could actually see the wires of the tires were actually peeking out, so I knew that that tire was pretty junk. So I went ahead and put some extra ones I had here in the garage. When I saw those, they honestly looked pretty good, so I was like, and they look like the rest of the tire has pretty good tread, so I was like, why would I change a perfectly good tire? If you see right here, it honestly looks like a brand new tire. But I hadn't noticed here on this side, it's where it's bad, and it's actually the inside part. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and get this tire replaced, and now I'm pretty sure that that will go ahead and get the noise that I've been hearing taken care of, because I have been hearing it here up front. I actually went ahead and took off the back tires to check to see if it was the e-brake that was actually sticking. So right now they're off. I went ahead and inspected everything, and everything looked good. So now I need to go ahead and put both of the tires back on. And now that I saw that this tire is pretty bad with the tread and like the scale kind of texture that it has, I'll go ahead and get those replaced. And now I'll go ahead and do a test drive after those are replaced, and hopefully that fixes the issue. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead and changed the front left tire now. Now I'm outside of the garage, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a test drive to see if the noise is now gone. Hopefully it is, but we'll go ahead and find out right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that squeaking noise right now, but that's actually, I believe it's the mounting lube that they use in the tire shop when they're trying to put the tires on. I had the same noise with my Bluesy when I replaced the front tires, and the first time I heard it, honestly, it freaked me out because I never heard it and it was so loud. But right now I'm kind of expecting it with, as you drive it and the tire gets dirty and all of that liquid comes off, it will start quieting down the noise. So as of right now, I'm not hearing the wheel noise, which is a good thing, but normally it does it at higher speeds. Right now I'm driving in residential areas, so I'm only going up to about 30 miles per hour. Here we'll go ahead and get on one of the main streets of the city, and we'll go ahead and see. Hopefully it doesn't do it, and I finally don't have to worry about that noise. there you guys have it, guys. I went ahead and drove it around the block here a little bit, and I did not hear the noise. Now, I did hear a bunch of other noises, but I mean, that's pretty reasonable considering it's almost a 20-year-old car. But most of the other noises were just like pieces of the plastic here in the interior that were squeaking and rattling. But finally, I was able to get that fixed. So honestly, what I would say is, if you're having that noise, go ahead and check your tires first. That was the simplest thing. I thought I did that, but obviously I didn't do that good, and I found out that one of the tires was actually bad. Got those changed, and that went ahead and took care of it. Now, is it a bad thing that I replaced the wheel bearings? Well, no, not really. They did look pretty old and rusty, so it's a good thing that I changed them anyways. Maybe they would have failed me here in a little bit. I did feel that the car did feel smoother. Obviously that had a lot to do with the tire that was bad, but I like to think that the bearings being new kind of helped smooth out the ride a little bit too. But yeah, guys, if you liked this video or you found it informative, please go ahead, give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next one.
Repeat after me. Hakuna Matata.